Chapter 28. The Final Fight. The scenery changed around Naruto in what could be described as a transcendence of some sort. Coming from that black void with Conan, teleported him to another place that he had never seen before. What turned from a bright white light, evolved into a milky pearlescent void that amazed him. "What are you doing here, brat?" Naruto turned to his right and saw the Nine Tails looking down to him in curiosity. "Kurama? Kurama, is this your human?" Naruto, shocked again, turned behind him and saw another Biju that was standing before him. Actually, there were many that were positioned around him. 9 different Biju in total. "Actually, I was the one that summoned Naruto here." All of the Bijus suddenly reeled back in surprise as they witnessed an older man with a goatee suddenly approach them all and head to the center, closer to Naruto. Naruto gazed at the other man in uncertainty. He had never seen this man before, and just for the added fact of having him suddenly show up in this alternate plane with all of the Biju, had him interested in what was happening. "Who are you, old man?" Naruto asked calmly. He already knew that there was something different about the old man that was in front of him. He could feel some kind of godly power coming from him and instinctively held back. He didn't know why, but even he felt nervous at this man's sudden entrance. "Naruto, have some respect. This is the Sage of Six Paths, Hagoromo Otsutsuki." "Sage of Six Paths?" Naruto replied questioningly. "You mean, he's like a super gramps then?" "You could call me that if you wish, although, it's more irrelevant than the information that I'm going to bestow upon you," the sage replied stoically. "I've been watching you and your world over the years as I traverse through space and time. The change of the world has been a massive one that has developed from a peaceful time to a more civil, but conflicting time." Naruto was following more closely than usual since he developed his Rinnegan. Surprisingly enough, he wasn't asking as many questions this time. "Your world has gained the use of chakra, and through several centuries, has created an evil in itself that hinders the progress of prosperity. Most of this is my fault, unfortunately, since I favored one of my sons more than the other. Indra and Ashura were my 2 sons that I cherished, but sadly have chosen separate paths." Naruto looked down and thought as a reminder that Sasuke and himself also have chosen separate paths. He already knew that Sasuke didn't want to be anywhere near Naruto, but Naruto heavily insisted over the years to bring Sasuke back, even if it meant to kill him. Those thoughts hit hard, but they hit nonetheless, and it caused a tension in his chest. "Naruto Uzumaki," the sage said as Naruto looked back up to him, "with everything that has happened over the years, I must apologize for everything. I didn't realize that things would escalate to such extremities as they have." The sage looked down and thought temporarily. There was a hint of something on his face, possibly remorse or regret, but Naruto couldn't discern what the old man was thinking. "Naruto Uzumaki, you have done well over the years you have been alive. I'm truly proud to have someone such as you carry on the legacy of my son Ashura. I've disturbed others in this world long enough, and I'm sure that Ashura is also growing weary of this eternal conflict." "What do you mean?" "I am saying that we must put an end to this eternal bloodshed between my 2 sons and finally lay this to rest. Therefore, I will bequeath to you new powers to ascertain dominance and ultimately conclude this cycle of animosity. With your current power, you will not win." "What?" Naruto asked with shock evident in his eyes. "But I'm already strong. How can I not defeat Madara?" "This Madara that you mentioned has received a lot of the Biju's chakra through a haphazard 10 Tails creation and has gained a foothold in godlike power. With his current strength, you will have no chance of defeating him, for he is far too powerful." Naruto visibly sulked once he noticed that he was actually losing the fight against Madara. It seemed like he was evenly matched against him. He always had an inside feeling that he was going to lose, but he couldn't give up hope. He knew that he had to fight Madara and win. He couldn't let Conan die without a revenge of some sort. "Okay, Super Gramps," Naruto said as he looked into the sage's eyes with determination. "What should I do?" Hagoromo was quiet for a few moments as he studied Naruto. "I see, so, you've been given the Rinnegan by someone. This will make things easier. Come, Uzumaki Naruto, we do not have much time. I will be leaving this plane shortly." Naruto did as he was told and started walking towards the sage. Hagoromo then looked to all of the Biju behind him who were obediently waiting for the sage to speak to them. He could see the wonder in their eyes, but he knew that he couldn't do much with them at the moment. A sad smile swept across his face quickly as he began to speak. "It's been a long time. I'm sorry to have left you in this state, but mortality is something that cannot be stopped. We didn't think that we would see you again, although." Kurama looked over to Naruto and thought before he smirked. "We found someone that is similar to you." Hagoromo quietly eyed the creatures before smiling softly at their response as they all nodded their heads. Even through their short interactions with Naruto over the course of the war, they could feel something different about the boy that was trying so desperately to save them. Then, there is something that you all must do. Hagoromo smiled sullenly at the beasts. Connect your chakra with Naruto. He will need your power to help end this charade and start a new chapter. The beasts looked at each other, questioning their creator's motives, but ultimately complied. They all reached an appendage out, and the ones who had hands bowled them into fists. Naruto looked at all of the Bijus strangely before a thought struck him. He was reminded of the time that Bee and the Eight Tails both would always bump fists. Then everything all started to make sense. He smiled genuinely as he looked on to the Biju. He formed a fist as well, and began to tap every single fist that was out. Naruto, sensing your power to the others is important. It makes sure that everyone has a connection and will never be separated. I used to be that link when I was still alive, but since I have passed away, and there hasn't been another, I believe it is time for you to carry on my position. Hagoromo reached his hands out. There are 2 more powers that I would like to give to you. Once I give you these powers, I will have to leave this plane, for I will not have enough spiritual energy to maintain my form. Kurama quietly thought about his creator's motives. He knew that he never truly understood his creator, but he always knew that there were things that Hagoromo was always hiding. He couldn't really do anything about it though, because to go against his creator who gave him life would be absolutely ridiculous. He knew that the sage was planning something, but he couldn't determine just what he was thinking. The sage always seemed to have some idea of how the future will play out, and Kurama knew that he was planning something to help that future come to fruition. Maybe it would be wise to carefully consider it and leave it alone for now. Naruto watched as Hagoromo placed 2 symbols on his hands, 1 in each palm. He also felt a sudden burning in his left eye that increased in intensity. The feeling left his eyes watering, but he could feel something new emerging from whatever was being done to him. He felt a new surge of power. It was something that he couldn't quite understand, but could just feel. It was a feeling of newfound confidence that he didn't otherwise have before. His eyes looked over to Hagoromo before he gazed down to his palms. A sun was etched on one hand, and a moon was placed on the other. These powers, the sage started up, they will help you turn the tides of the fight in your favor. Naruto was in awe as he looked at his hands and back at Hagoromo. Thank you, Super Gramps. I don't know how to repay you. The sage threw his hand up into the air. Think nothing of it. It is something that I'm doing to correct a wrong that I have made many years ago. It was something I should have done while I was still alive. Naruto looked on in wonder before he smiled in determination. I'm ready. Hagoromo smiled as Naruto somehow disappeared from the plane with the Biju. He looked to the other Bijus studiously before lowering his eyes in sadness. I'm sorry. The other Biju were curious about his random apology, but only shrugged it off. The Eight Tails being the most vocal. Don't worry about it, father. We really like this new kid. I think everything will turn out all right now. Hagoromo's gaze faltered as he looked towards the ground. I really hope so. The world's future rests in your hands now, Naruto. Even in you, Konan. You both will be the saviors of this world. I will make sure I right that wrong that I've made. Human life is such a volatile and fickle thing. Later, Naruto stood quietly as he came to back on the battlefield. He blinked his eyes slowly to regain his bearings. Large clouds of dust fogged the area from the explosion that happened previously between the 2 Biju bombs that were released. He didn't know why, but he suddenly felt more powerful than he had before. His eyes traced his palms and saw each hand with a symbol placed upon them and smiled. That interaction that he had with the Biju and the Sage of Six Paths wasn't a dream. It was an actual thing that happened. He chuckled as he flexed his fingers. He suddenly felt more motivated to fight. Newfound strength seemed to take hold of him, and he didn't think that he could lose anymore. Suddenly, he burst to life with his golden chakra form. It was replaced with a more refined cloak that lacked the tamo on the collar. He also noticed similar-looking black spheres that were akin to Madara's spheres that floated behind him. Madara looked back towards Naruto and noticed Naruto's sudden change. His eyes darted to the spheres behind him and the sudden change in attire. His eyes lowered in discontent. Naruto seems to have done something. I don't know what it was, but it seems like he's gained more power. Madara stood watching the boy who was looking at himself in awe before he leered back towards Madara. Although, Naruto looked more confident than before. What happened to you? Madara asked curiously. It's not like you have any more power, so how did you acquire it? Naruto looked at Madara surprised before he laughed and stuck his tongue out as if he would like to know. It doesn't matter, because it will only help to defeat you. Madara was angered by Naruto's disrespect and only stanced himself again for battle. He already knew that the boy in front of him would just meet his demise. Why was he even trying so hard? Did Naruto even know anything about the real world that was around him? Suddenly, a sound erupted from behind Naruto. A bright light screamed towards Naruto and Madara in a blinding haze. Neither knew what was happening as they shielded their eyes towards the strange light that seemed to have come from nowhere. The light faded into a faint glow. Naruto brought his arm down and watched the new unknown figure. Naruto was at a loss as he witnessed someone who he thought was dead before him and living. On top of that, he was also seeing something different about the woman that was floating before him. Konan-chan. The woman seemed ethereal. She was floating in the air, but that's not what was surprising. Her clothes seemed to change. She wore a white robe that was long in length. The sleeves of the robe were whitened at the end. Her clothes accented red in several places. Her hair, that was originally shortened and a darkened shade of pale blue, now turned into hair that extended past her waistline. Her hair color was lightened to a color that was barely even considered anything remotely blue. It looked more white than anything. Protruding from her head were two horns that were colored darker shade of brown, but one was longer than the other. The red circle that was given to her by the Sage of Six Paths was darkened a deep tint of red. Two white spots were placed above her eyebrows. Her form was motionless, but she almost looked like she was in thought. Her arms seemed to wrap around herself. Two paper wings sprouted forth from her form and extended widely against her sides. Her figure glowed with a white aura that shined brighter than anything Naruto had ever seen. She almost looked like an angel. Naruto was awed at her presence and almost teared up at her sudden arrival. He didn't know why she was alive, but he was glad that she was. Madara looked over to her and noticed that she was different than before. More surprising was that she was alive again. I thought I had killed her. Naruto must have done something without me realizing. No matter, I will take care of her just as I did before. He prepared to leave, but noticed that his body almost didn't want to comply. What? He looked at his hands and noticed that they were beginning to shake. I'm scared. He couldn't believe it. He didn't understand what was going on within his mind, but he needed it to cease. He sweated lightly and gulped to push down that feeling that was attacking him. There was simply no way he was scared now, just because it seemed like they both acquired a new power. He would just take them down again. He was supposed to win, that's right. I'm going to be the one to win. These new powers of theirs won't do anything in the long run. I will defeat them both. Madara wasted no time to attack Naruto that was in front of him. He went and threw one of his black spheres towards Naruto that turned into a long rod. Naruto proceeded to deflect the rod with one of his spheres, surprising Madara only slightly before he pushed through to hit Naruto in full force. Madara didn't know what happened. He was trying to hit Naruto and suddenly, Konan came in between them quickly and knocked Madara backwards. He flew down into the ground with a powerful and quick boom that shattered the ground beneath him. Damn it. My Rinnegan couldn't see that attack quickly enough. How did she get so strong? He coughed up blood from his lungs as he stood back up. The anger that began to boil in his stomach was far outweighing the patience that he had to eliminate them both. This isn't good. Konan POV. Konan felt weightless. She couldn't quite understand what was happening to her. It was a feeling she couldn't explain. She didn't know why, but she felt more jubilant than ever. There was a sense of strength that she had never felt before coursing through her veins. She looked downwards and saw the robe that she was wearing. It looked like it was made with chakra, but the chakra was so compact that it also seemed like fabric. She couldn't explain any of this. What happened to me? She witnessed the strange glow that seemed to permeate her skin. It gave a warm contact. She could feel the energy in the air. She could feel the chakra in the wind. She could feel it all around her. Even if she couldn't see it, feeling it was enough to know that there was indeed something different. Her mind recalled to the time that Konan had in the afterlife. A thought struck her as she remembered the sage that came to her and gave her a new power that she never had before. The sage, this new power is what he gave me. Amazing. She stood in wonder to her newfound strength. She felt like she could do anything. A grin swept through her features. I can do anything, but I need more chakra. She started to laugh ominously at herself as she thought about it all. Her desire for power was something she was starting to become desperate for. Her eyes lowered as she witnessed two powers that came from her right. Smiling, she darted off towards these new powers. She needed more, so she was going to get more. She flew quickly to these new powers in front of her. It was almost as if she went there in the blink of an eye. The power that she received was far beyond what she ever thought she could achieve, and the best part was that there was more power waiting for her. Her eyes dashed to the weaker of the two as she suddenly stopped behind him. Her hands went to grab him, but she stopped midway. Memories resurfaced of everything about a blonde boy that infiltrated her heart. Her feelings burst forth, and she couldn't hold them in. Her hands fell to her side before she wrapped them around herself. Naruto-kun. What was I doing? She was reminded of what the sage mentioned to her, do not take it lightly. Her hands gripped the robe that was covering her. She remembered. The sage told her that the power would try to rule her mind. This sudden power went to her head and she couldn't believe how easily her mind became swayed by the lust for power. She felt disappointed. She knew she was stronger than that. But she wasn't going to let that stop her now. Her mind recalled all of the events that happened before she came back to life. Her eyes hardened once she gazed upon Madara. She could see him about to attack. As soon as he darted for Naruto, her instincts took over and immediately got between them. She punched him with unparalleled speed in the face. He speared into the ground with a loud bang and surprised Naruto with her speed. That's amazing, Konan. Konan looked behind her and smiled. Her hair danced against the wind and seemed to also have a mind of its own sometimes. I think we can take him on now. I have a final plan, Naruto-kun. I hope you can keep up. Naruto grinned with slight tears in his eyes before he punched his palm. You bet. His eyes gazed over to the man that was currently on the ground. He could see that the attack hurt him and surprised him greatly. Madara was about to understand just what true strength was. Madara rushed forward again, but this time he aimed for Konan. As soon as he got close to her, however, her body shifted from its position. Surprised, Madara looked over and saw Konan rearing to punch again. He blocked this time and used his spheres to create a protective shell in front of him. Konan punched him again and sent him crashing into the ground again. How did she do that? Naruto smirked as he watched Madara get punched again. Konan had such raw strength from her attacks that he couldn't believe it. Her punches seemed to be stronger than Sakura's, and he didn't even think that was possible. How was he doing this? She looked different too. He would have to ask her later about it all. Naruto was surprised that Madara couldn't see that he was using his Rin Sharingan against him. The power that was given to him was becoming quite useful. With all of the chakra that Naruto had, he wouldn't be surprised if he could use it many times without growing tired. Madara was currently confused. She somehow went through his shield and hit him again. You're both different. This isn't right. How did you become so strong? Konan didn't say anything as she rushed towards him on the ground. Her paper rushed towards the foe and started to create a barrier around him. They exploded quickly, but Madara evaded the papers by the use of his spheres. He wasn't going to let her use that paper jutsu against him anymore. He already knew ways to defeat it. Naruto suddenly appeared behind Madara and tried to strike him with a Rasengan. His hand was pushed upwards. Madara quickly looked towards Konan and saw as she opened a portal and disappeared from sight. A portal? So, she can quickly move from one place to another. This might be a problem. Naruto got hit but disappeared in a puff of smoke. Naruto ran through the shadow clone smoke with another Rasengan, but Madara already saw this coming into play. He quickly evaded and threw Naruto's hand away from him. Madara widened his eyes as he quickly turned around and noticed Konan coming to latch onto him. He saw her portal that was already closing behind her. I couldn't even see her coming. Madara's spheres created another shield to block him from being touched by Konan. He turned and dashed several feet away from them. He had to think about what he was going to do. Do you think I'm going to give you time? Surprised, Madara turned behind him again and saw Konan come through another portal. Her eyes held malice against the man that was in front of her. Madara turned around and prepared himself, but Konan stood still in preparation. You thought that you were going to be the one to win. You thought it was going to be so easy. I can see it in your eyes. You're afraid. Madara clenched his fists. I'm not afraid of anything. When I'm through with the both of you, there will be nothing left to this world. I will make sure of it. Konan's eyes burned into the man's figure. Her recollection of all of the damage he's done poured into her mind. She knew that Madara wasn't someone who could be reasoned with, but she decided to give it one shot. Madara, you're about to meet your end, but before I do I will give you one chance. You can redeem yourself right here and right now. Revive everyone here and I'll spare you a slow and painful death. Madara frowned in distaste. I don't want redemption. I want to see this world disappear. No one will ever make me change my mind. Not even Naruto Uzumaki, who seemed to change everyone else's. Konan glanced at Naruto who was behind Madara and turned her sight back to her enemy. He didn't want to be saved. He didn't want any of that. He didn't want this world anymore. He didn't care if he took down every last human to do it. He knew that he was going to carry out his plan and end this entire hell that's been created by Kaguya. He knew that nothing that anyone would do could make a difference. It was all pointless. He knew it was. Konan saw this inside. There will always be people that you can't persuade. No matter how hard you tried, it would never work. Her eyesight lowered as she began to speak. Your reign of terror is coming to an end. Any last words? Madara smirked as he took on another stance. As a matter of fact, I do. Madara then rushed forward, charging toward Conan as quickly as he could. Die. Conan saw as he rushed forward with vigor. Everything slowed down as Madara came close. Conan's eyes lit up with anger. Her body twisted as she narrowly escaped his touch. Madara's face changed into shock as he tripped forward past Conan without warning and went headfirst into the dimensional portal that she created. With his head only inside of the portal, he tried to turn around, but his body didn't want to cooperate. What? I can't control my body. A thought suddenly struck him as he thought in anger. So, it's you? Do you want it to have a last stand as a leaf shinobi, huh? He felt as two hands from different sides punched him hard in the back, forcing him all of the way inside of the portal. He fell from the sky into a hot desert below. His scream echoed into the vast desert as he took his plunge. Colliding with the sand, he spit up some dirt and got back up on his feet as quickly as he could. He saw as the portal began to close and desperately tried to reach the hole in the sky. He screamed with all of his might, I'm Madara Uchiha. You can't defeat me. I will bring your world to its end. You will not win. Conan. Once he got closer, he saw as Conan looked onto him with distaste, but satisfaction. Remember why you lost, Madara. Her last words would forever haunt him as he saw the portal close just before he got to it. It disappeared into nothingness and made Madara curse violently. Anger boiled inside as he vented dangerously to his surroundings. Conan. His screams of rage slowly dissipated as the portal closed to both Naruto and Conan's end. Naruto and Conan sighed a breath of relief as she looked over to Naruto in satisfaction. Her eyelids got heavy as she started changing back into her normal form. Hey Naruto-kun, we did it. She fell over as she went unconscious in his arms. Conan. Are you alright? He looked onto her form, but saw as she was silently sleeping deeply within his arms. She was not waking up. With haste, Naruto created another shadow clone and made it dash off towards Tsunade with Conan in the clone's arms. He stood there quietly as he watched his clone run off with the body of his friend. He closed his eyes softly and breathed out a sigh. Sasuke, I know you're here. I've been waiting for you. Sasuke grinned smugly as he walked forward from behind a rock. So it seems like you've defeated Madara. Naruto didn't say anything as Sasuke continued. I know that woman did most of the work though. You must not be very strong. I guess we will see about that, bastard.
End of chapter 28.